No increased volume.
How's that sound?
Oh. Uh, everyone's ready?
I think we're good to go.
I'm on your mark, Daniel. All right, good morning, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here with us this morning. With me, I have Katrina Thomas, who leads PEP for the City of Birmingham, along with Nicole King, who leads the Office of the City Attorney. I also have this young man, Josh Yates, who leads Public Works for the City of Birmingham, and Caroline Douglas, who leads the Land Bank, City of Birmingham Land Bank. Before we get into the topic of what was before the council today related to this addendum item declaring all of these blighted private properties public nuisance in one lump sum and explaining the why of that, I do want to acknowledge what stayed on consent today, which was the contract with Alabama Power to extend the original agreement for additional and expansions of our camera program with them that include being placed on their poles as well as license plates readers and other forms of technology to enhance our toolbox, if you would, of addressing public safety. We have appreciated the first half of the year as it relates to where we are with homicides and the decrease of gun violence. I think I've stood before you all many times, and you've stood before me and asked questions about what we're going to do to get it down over and over. The first half of the year is tremendous progress. Now, we're not resting on what's accomplished the first half. There's still a second half of the year to go. And as I've stated and I'll share with you, the truth is one homicide is too many. But it's important that we make this issue a priority of public safety, particularly around decreasing gun violence and especially around decreasing homicides. And we've done that with over a 50% decrease in homicides. And so kudos to Michael Pickett, Chief of Police, and the entire police department for their aggressive efforts and their new approach to how they're keeping us safe. In addition to that, I want to thank all the partners who've helped in this decreasing crime. And I want to thank the citizens for calling 911, for increasing, stepping up their neighborhood watch, for using Crime Stoppers, for actually talking to investigators and detectives and beat officers, sharing information, playing an active role to keep our community safe. So I want to publicly thank our citizens as well. With that stated, we just had a very colorful conversation, if you would, about an issue that has been existing in our city for decades. But it's reached a point this year that we've never had. We start with the fact that the city of Birmingham is responsible for cutting city right-of-way. The city of Birmingham is responsible for cutting city parks as well as city properties and facilities where we have green, if you would. But we're not responsible for cutting private lots. That is not an actual function of a municipality. What is the function of a city municipality is to hold those private owners of those lots accountable. And Birmingham has a mix of private owners who are not doing their part, whether it's air property, slumlords who don't do their part, or, in my opinion, the worst, absentee landlords who live in another city in Jefferson County and on their street, their home, their neighbors, all good. But in Birmingham, where they own property, the neighbor, and sometimes in a lot of cases, the senior elder who live next to them, they're not taking care of their property. We take issue with that. That issue is gone beyond what we can handle this year because of the excess of rain that happened in May and June. So over our 8-week, 2-month window, we had 21 days out of 31 days of May of rain. And in June, out of 30 days, we had 22 days of rain. Because of that excessive amount of rain in our city, it got our crews behind, it got our contractors behind, and everything. Meanwhile, the senior elder who has to live next to one of these lots has an issue next door to them that we believe is an emergency issue. It's a public health concern issue, whether it's rodents, snakes, or anything of that nature. we need to accelerate the process to get to these public nuisances that are private lots. Part of the battle here, if you would, it takes us at least 45 days to declare a private property a public nuisance. Then you add on, after the council declares it, it has to go back and have to engage various departments before it even gets to a list for a contractor to cut. We got to accelerate that process because those seniors and elders and other residents don't deserve to live next to that, and it's particularly challenged because of the rain. Therefore, the people you see here came together, worked with our legal department, got creative, and we got to this point. We have a lot of work to do. The work has already started even prior to this vote today. Thanks to, again, Public Works, Land Bank, PEP, and our private contractors. They're blitzing areas of town to go in and handle these lots. With this vote today, that allows them to accelerate it as well as us to hire more contractors. We're saying all this and giving all this information because you need to know. You know, it's likely one of you all will go out here and have a conversation or interview next to someone that stays next to these lots. And they'll have a lot to say about what the city is or is not doing. It is not humanly possible or financially possible for the city of Birmingham to use public tax dollars to cut every private lot in the city. One, that is not our responsibility with your tax dollars. Two, even if we went on once, we can't go on a private lot every 2 weeks like you cut your own home every 2 weeks. That's not realistic. But we want to manage this with the best we can. The good news, this council approved $3 million for this problem that went into effect 7 days ago, July 1. This allows us to accelerate and get that $3 million out the door to get to many lots as possible that are not owned by the city. So, with that said, do you have any questions for these four smart people?
I was going to ask, I know that you're trying to hold these property owners accountable.
Yes.
But with the money that will be used to bring in the contractors, will those contractors still go and cut yards that are on this list? Like, what does that look like?
It does. So the contractors, I can answer your question twofold. The contractors will cut on any properties on this list. That's one. Two, you mentioned holding them accountable. So there are two ways we want to do that. One already exists. Well, two already exists. And then there's a third thing we want to add. We currently have a lien process. So every time we go on a person's private property, we actually put a lien on the property. So before they can sell it or do anything else, they owe us. But what's happening is, particularly around the absentee owners, they're just sitting on the property. They're not only not maintaining it, they're not paying the city of Birmingham back the public tax dollars we use on private property. We have since found through our GIS system that there are almost 15,000 of these tax delinquent properties that exist in our city. To be exact, 14,820. That is a crazy number. That is an unsustainable number. And that is a sad reflection of absentee owners who don't take pride of owning property in the city of Birmingham. Because I guarantee where they live, their street doesn't look like that. Their yard doesn't look like that. So shame on them for making Birmingham look the way it does in some of these neighborhoods. With that said, we've gone from putting a lien on there to working with our Jefferson County delegation, particularly led by Linda Coleman Madison. With her bill that was just passed from the last session that ended, there's now a lien foreclosure bill that exists. We, in return, have to take that bill, create our own local ordinance, and thanks to Ms. King and her team, that ordinance now exists. We have to get that back before City Council. That's going to give us a more aggressive, bigger tool to hold them accountable, and if they don't, then we're going to foreclose their property. But I want to be clear, we don't want to be in the business of owning these properties. We want them to go back on the tax roll. We want vertical single-family homes on those lots. We want children and families playing in the front yard. That's our desire. Community development is working on that. That's a process. But there is no other city in the state of Alabama that has almost 15,000 of these. This is a very unique Birmingham problem. It's apples and oranges to compare us to any other city. It doesn't have our landmass size. It never had 340,000 people. It didn't have this amount of white flight after the 70s. It didn't have this many people who die and heirs don't have wills. This is a very unique Birmingham problem that requires all of us to get creative. So I hope I answered your question.
This has been a problem, you said, for quite some time now. So why was it important to declare it an emergency right now?
The answer is very simple. Again, all y'all have a weather person that's really cool. It talks about what's weather is happening in Birmingham. You know the challenges we face in May and June. We all know grass starts growing back at the end of March. Then it grows again in April. And we all know May, June, July, August, as each month goes, grass cutting gets more challenged. Think about your own yard. Think about your own property or your parents' property where, that grass bill increases every month, right? Well, think about the amount of rain. There's another way to look at it. Josh Yates' team has dealt with something that I don't think we've ever dealt with since we've been a team, which is the amount of trees that have fell. The reason so many trees fell in May and June because the ground was so saturated. So any form of high wind, whether it's city property or private property, I've never seen the forestry team have to deal with so many fallen trees. That being the case, if that was happening with trees, what do you think is happening with empty lots? With that much saturation of rain. You couple with the fact that much rain doesn't allow them to use their equipment for majority of the days in May, for the majority of the days in June. In the 8-week window, they couldn't cut for probably almost 5, 6 of them. Minimum 5 of the 8 weeks they couldn't cut daily. So now we have lots where grass is as high as up to people's knees. And the real issue is that creates a public safety as well as a public health issue, particularly public health when you have rodents in those lots. But the concern is the senior. The concern is the older woman, the older man who stays next to this property and doesn't have a family member to help them, doesn't have good neighbors to cut that lot next to them, and depend on city tax dollars to declare that property a public nuisance. We need to accelerate that process that I told you takes 45 days, and that is why.
How many of these lots are you planning to clear up?
Yeah, so the Rubik, I don't have the Rubik in the number in detail. I also want to be clear, all right? We want to manage expectations. $3 million will not cut 15,000 lots. That's not realistic. That's not possible. However, we believe we will be able to make a significant dent. We will break this up, and you can speak to this if I'm missing something. We will break this up in various quadrants of the city and then go in and blitz an area, and then they will move to the next area. The reason they're standing here is because they've been leading this effort as well as agreeing to work together. So they're collapsing teams. Public Works is going in with Land Bank, going in with the PEP contractors, going in with Park and Rec crews. Everybody's going in one area, hit it, move to the next. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir.
He says I have it right. Yeah.
Can we talk about the legality of things?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There you go.
So we're holding not just absentee owners, property owners accountable, maybe those who live out of state. And we understand this is within the city limits, so some things might be misdemeanors. But what does a fine look like? How much are we thinking you can hold these people accountable to really make this stick?
Well, so we're looking at fines anywhere from $0 up to $500. And also we have our drug nuisance abatement team assessing these properties as well.
And I want to add, before you go to him, because I know you have a question for him too. I gave you 2, but I failed to tell you the third thing we wanted to do. This is one of those unique issues where not having home rule really sucks. I know they want me to use a better word. This is where not having home rule really hurts the city of Birmingham. There you go, Rick. I cleaned it up. But here's why it hurts. These absentee property owners have no remorse. They're not willing to do their part. So we got to force them. In one hand, we should call them out, shame them, and embarrass them for not doing their part. But in the other hand, we need a bigger accountability stick. I think the stick is simple. Right now, any of you all go out here and run a stop sign, and an officer sees it. You get pulled over, you get a ticket. You have two options. You pay your ticket, or you go to court. If you don't pay your ticket and you fail to go to court, you get what's called an FTA, failure to appear notice. You get a warrant, bench warrant for your arrest for not paying a ticket and not going to court. But what happens when each of you try to renew your license or renew your tag every year? If you got that warrant on you, you're not going to be able to get that license renewed. You may not get that tag renewed. Oh, by the way, somebody's going to probably pick you up and you'll be in custody, especially if you go to Arkadelphia. And you know I'm not playing. Why do I say that? Because I think that's the same type of tool cities need on the civil side. When a absentee owner year after year after year refuses to take care of their property, we go on their private property, we use public tax dollars, we cut that private lot, we put a lien on it, and not only don't we collect, but that person gets away with it. We need that type of law passed by the state to force that person, if you want to get right and be a law-abiding citizen, renew your license or your tag, you got to take care of your responsibility first and pay the city back. No different than you have to pay that same city back for a stop sign. Now you tell me which is worse. Which is worse? The person who runs the stop signs and fails to appear in court, or the person year after year refuse to take care of their property, won't cut their lot, but the neighbor next door is only mad at the city of Birmingham? You had a question, Brent?
My question for you is,
Come on.
for your public works crews, I know this will be a daunting task. So how are they preparing now to get this started? When will they start, and what does it look like for them, especially with other things they already have to deal with on an everyday basis?
So our crews have already begun work, and they've really started forming around the well, I'll let you speak about the specific locations, but the crews, basically how this is going to help with them. The contractor that we have coming in currently, we're responsible for 112 parks cutting, and so we're able to take 50 of those parks off of our crews. And so now, instead of going to that park to keep that park cut every 2 weeks, those same crews will now be able to blitz with us in our neighborhoods to add to our horticulture and our spray teams, be able to go in there, hit these areas, and hit them with more staff, more teams, more crews, to be able to really target certain areas, try to wipe out as much as we can. That's in conjunction with Land Bank, that's in conjunction with PEP contractors coming in on the weed bill, the lots that get passed every week at council. So we're going to do our part to go in and hit those lots, hit everything we can in the area in conjunction with our partners.
And where are those problematic areas, those neighborhoods you might notice more of an issue?
I can answer that.
Okay.
I can answer that. Because this is where they go. As soon as I tell the crews this, they're gonna go out there. But I've already shared this public, and I think it's important to know. First of all, this issue exists citywide. This issue is less of a challenge in districts 1, 2, and 3. What you find in those districts is they're actually more. There's a percentage-wise, there's a higher home ownership, and there are less vacant properties. So that's just a fact, right? When you get 4 through 9, the challenges become extremely higher. Now, the two districts that are outliers in this conversation are 4 and 9. They have the highest form of absentee owners and the highest forms of empty lots. We believe part of it is because of just the historical issues Birmingham has faced, where the government participated in a bad way. Since 1871, everyone knows Birmingham is one of the most redlined cities in America. And 4 and 9, if you recall, you can just track our city's history and growth. In both of those districts, you had a higher concentration of our number one economic identity, and that was steel, right? The production of steel. But from that, you also had neighborhoods that had significant challenges as far as environmental air quality. You had homes that were built in floodplains that should have never been built, surrounded by train tracks, and a host of other things that exist. When those industries left 4 and 9, you can see this gradual, unfortunately, negative progression of not just white flight in the 70s, but continued issues in today's time, whether, again, it's the air property or some would say pillagers. Some of those people who are high bond LLCs come in and buy properties, but they're in a whole other state, refuse to take care of their property, or from absentee owners who refuse to take care of their properties who live in Jefferson County. Those 2, 4, and 9 exist at a rate that's way higher than I would say 6, 7, and 8. Now 6, 7, and 8 has those issues and they're large, but not as large as 4 or 9. Less than 1, 2, and 3, and 5 to an extent.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so knowing this is passed at council this morning, and this is an issue that you guys are taking over right now, I guess just for those property owners that are, not taking care of their list, what do you want them to know moving forward?
Yeah, you are, look. Ooh. Marie's over here, Rick's here, so they're both like, they're like good angels sitting right here on my shoulders of what I'm about to say. It's not fair. It's not right. You're not a good neighbor. Just because you don't live in the city but you own property doesn't give you the right not to take care of your property. The resident next to that property, I want you to imagine if that was your mother or your grandmother. If that was your mother or your grandmother, you'd be up in arms walking down the person that owns that property. She shouldn't have to live next to this lot that has rodents in it, or overgrown, or that when she has guests has to drive in the neighborhood and look at that. It's not right, it's not fair, you're wrong. If you live in Jefferson County in another city, I swear to you, we will start publicly calling you out if you're unresponsive to us. And I'm defining unresponsive as something very simple. Take care of your property. We will gladly come stand outside your front door.
And my last question will be to that resident that lives next door to that house that is a problem. And this was touched in there, so if you could just tell us here. Maybe they made a complaint a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
And they feel like they need to be at the top of the list. Reassure them on what that process looks like.
Yes.
Will they be taken care of?
So yeah, I think our residents have some legitimate concerns. They have legitimate frustrations. It's been an issue every year. When you have almost 15,000 tax delinquent properties, the truth is, I think we know with public tax dollars, it's not realistic to cut 15,000, right? However, with this blitz we're doing, with what the council passed today, and with this $3 million, we're ushering every resource at one time. We go into the area, and that complaint exists, it'll be handled.
So don't expect to be first, so don't expect to be fifth on the list, but there is a process if you would just
Correct.
help them understand.
Yeah, so the process is through this blitz. So what we will do, and this is important, so thank you for the question. Our commitment is to over-communicate, even if it requires us to communicate daily in various channels, what we're doing and where we will be with the blitz when we go into these areas. All right? Y'all have been kind with your time. Do you have anything else for these 4 amazing people who know this issue way better than I do? All right.
Anything else they'd like to add, or you think we might have missed our question?
Can I ask one question? Old ways, sorry. How many, just to make sure, how many contractors will we bring on? What's our plan on those?
How many contractors?
So Public Works has 2.
2. PEP has how many?
Currently have 16.
Yeah, so at least 18 contractors.
If PEP stands for,
Planning, engineering, and permits.
got
You
Thank
said
you.
$3 million is what the city
Set aside for weed abatement where we engage contractors. Yes, $3 million. Yeah, this has steadily been increased every year.
So you bring in more contractors, or are you going to stick with those 18?
Bringing in more. This will allow us to bring in more as well.
Sorry, like I said, old hat.
Thank y'all.